Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital Leaders Show, where each week we discuss key issues and news at the intersection of business, technology, and the humanities in hopes of making you a better digital leader. This week, we're discussing customer experience. Is it dead? Will AI save it? What's next? With our special guest, CX and automation expert, Oded Karev. We're live each Wednesday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, 6 Central European Time. We're on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and the audio recording is available on major podcast platforms the following week. Don't forget to check us out at DEInetwork.com for executive coaching, industry briefings, and peer-to-peer custom research. I'm Dan Goodstein. I head up Digital Enterprise Institute and IRPA AI, the Institute for Robotic Process Automation and Artificial Intelligence. We're a professional association and peer-to-peer research network, providing education, networking, and advice to over 130,000 members globally, all around automation, AI, and digital transformation. My co-host, as always, is Carlos Alvarenga. He's a researcher and author, an educator at the University of Maryland and Georgetown University, former advisor at EY and Accenture, and the founder of the E4S Foundation to provide financial support for students pursuing a career in journalism. Carlos, good to have you as well.
And good afternoon. Good to see you again.
So, Carlos, we've talked, I think, ad nauseum about ChatGPT and some of the use cases with it. This week, a little bit more news in that world. But what's catching your eyes in the headlines this week?
A couple of things, right? You mentioned we see now looks like Google's response to ChatGPT, Bard, I think it's called, has been released or is about to be released. We also understand that Baidu is putting out their product as well sometime soon. So either they were all sitting kind of preparing to be released and ChatGPT sort of tipped their hand, or we now have, like we said before, right, across this sort of threshold where you see that these products are not going to change the conversation around AI. I think it's still a very interesting thing. That caught my attention. The other thing we were chatting before you went live was a report this morning on Bloomberg that half of all options being traded today on the market are what are called 0-day expiration, which means they expire at the end of the trading day. They're equally balanced calls and puts, which suggests that the professionals are hedging themselves every 24 hours, which means that the market is anybody's guess what happens in the stock market over the course of the next few weeks. So interesting times, either if you're looking for new technology or where the economy is headed in the next 12 months or so.
You know, it's wild. I've been watching the market this year, just kind of seeing where things are going to go. And, ever since the big kind of, hit late last year, it just seemed like nothing can hurt this. I mean, a couple days ago, Meta was up 20% after we were all talking doom and gloom around what's happening at Facebook. And, the tech sector stocks that we had a show a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now, Carlos, about just the tech bubble, possibly, bursting, and doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, the market got a real boost last week because the interpretation was that Jerome Powell and the Fed felt that the worst is over, and that the patient's fever is broken, and the cures that were put that sort of affect inflation have started to come work. So we'll see what happens today when Powell talks at 12:40, and whether he sort of reinforces that view, which sent the markets rocketing, the minute he stopped speaking, or whether he comes in and puts a little bit of cold water on the market and says, "Hey, you misinterpreted what I was saying. We're hardly out of the woods," right? And again, I think that's what he's going to say. But these days, with the market, who knows? Even if he did say that, they might decide, well, he's not serious, so it's okay, and we'll just keep right on sale. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. And, the only other thing that really caught my eye was just, as you say, more and more coming out around, ChatGPT and generative AI. And, if you're watching this and you want to hear more on that, check out our last 2 episodes. We did it at length, different use cases and really what it means for the automation space, for the AI space, for just really the enterprise space. But you're right. There was an interesting article, I think it was in Forbes this week, with Bill Gates talking about his experience actually meeting the OpenAI team about a year ago, and just what it means for technology in general. And then the other piece which we touched on last week, which I wanted to go deeper on, is there's a lot of conversations around how AI will be implemented for the benefit of content and marketing and image recognition, a lot of the creative aspects of it. But I'm a big fan of kind of leveraging AI and technology in the customer experience space. So with that, I want to invite our guest Oded Karev to join us. He's an automation and AI customer experience expert, previously with tech provider Nice Systems, and also formerly with Accenture. Oded, great to have you.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Carlos. Great to being here.
Welcome.
So before we jump in, Oded, give everybody a little bit of your background and some of the kind of things that you've worked on in your career, just to set some context.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I started my professional career with Accenture, strategy consulting side of the house, did mainly management consulting, mostly around front office work, right? So customer experience, customer journey, optimizing channels, a lot of post-merger integration work, mainly in contact centers and front office optimization, and so on. And from that, after I was leading the strategy consulting practice for Accenture in Israel, I moved to Nice. Nice is the global provider of customer experience in front office software, the contact center giant, if you want. And it was a great continuation for me, being both strategy expert as well as understanding what customer needs and wants from my consulting life. I've been the company director of corporate strategy for 3 years. And then when Nice decided to establish RPA as a standalone line of business, I was fortunate enough to be asked to lead it. And from inception, I founded this line of business. And then for 6.5 years, I was the general manager of Nice RPA, taking it from being a small software related to contact center to a market leader as Nice is today. That's what I did up until last month, so quite recently.
So Oded, set it up. Why is because you've worked with all kinds of clients across multiple industries, from probably the most legacy centric companies to the most digital native companies. Why is customer service so bad? I mean, I want to say, is it dead? Just because I can't think of the last positive customer experience that I had. I mean, they're just there's a couple outliers, but the vast majority of them are really, really bad. So what's your sense as to why this happened? Easy for me to say as a customer, what's happening under the hood.
So I'll split my response to two. First of all, not only that customer experience is not dead, it cannot die, right? It only increases in importance to organizations, what we call service providers. And this crosses a lot of verticals that have one thing in common: they need to provide a service. It can be retail banking or telcos and communication, or utilities, or insurance, or travel and leisure, or healthcare, you name it. The common ground that these guys need to provide some sort of service to consumers, right? And the importance of customer experience continuously grows, right? More and more and more, the importance of customer experience grows. And I'll explain why. It's very, very hard to differentiate these days, right? Time to market is getting shorter and shorter. So if someone is launching a new product, it would take a very short while for a competitor to catch up. All right. So it's very hard to differentiate on product. If you think of massive industries that went Big disruptions. I mentioned telcos, right? Remember how much you used to pay for telco 3 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago? This is declining in a cadence, and they don't have other revenue streams, because you remember the days we paid for ringtones. We paid for data. Today it's one price, all you can text, all you can speak, long distance call. ILD, no one calls long distance. You can use an app to do that. They don't sell even devices anymore. It's so hard for them. And then how do you differentiate on the $2 difference between T-Mobile and Verizon and so on? It's all around experience. So they try to differentiate on network, but network is also an experience, right? It's the quality of the experience when you speak. But they must differentiate on experience. And it's the same with banking. We mentioned the central bank and the Fed, and so much regulation, such a heavy regulation on banks. Eventually, when they offer you a mortgage, it's all calculated based on your risk profile, which is, FICO, Experian, Public, and they have very little legroom or leeway. So they cannot differentiate the financial products. What do? You differentiate on experience time and time again. Now that we've established that customer experience is so much more important today, why the experience is so horrific? It's not bad, it's just bad. Very bad. And there are a few reasons for that, right? And the reasons for that are, A, the complexity of the interactions is going up due to digital. All right? I'm going to let it sink in for a second. You say, wait a minute. We have so many digital channels, right? You can go online and do so many activities you used to call or go to the branch or meet the agent, right? You now do them by yourself. You self-serve. So it should be easier. Yes. However, all the interactions, all the transactions that went digital are the simple ones, are the quick ones, are the straightforward ones, are the ones that you can easily automate. What is still hitting a human agent is the complicated ones. It's the ones that are unique. It's the ones that are not very frequent. It's the edge cases. Now, in the past, you used to call for something simple, and the agent used to sort you in a second, or in a minute or two, 400 seconds. Today, when you call, your interaction, the best agent would not be able to sort it under than 800 or 900 seconds. So the interactions themselves become more complex, but in our experience, I spent more time on the phone. One. Second, most interactions were sort fast, RXP, etc. Now an agent needs to be expert in this very complicated situation. However, not all agents are super agents. They're not being paid rocket paychecks, right? So you have few experts that usually the more complicated interactions are routed to, and the guys that are in the trenches just doing the repetitive engagements. However, repetitive engagements are lower, more complicated engagements are higher. It hits the mass population of agents. They're not as savvy in these complicated processes. Number two. Number three, and we discussed it many times in many variations over the last 4 or 5 years, it's just around the situation of the IT landscape in these large service providers, right? I recently met a startup trying to sort this problem, and one of the reasons that they went down this road of integrating systems is that they have heard it's an unsolvable problem. They met a large bank, and the bank just told them, look, guys, we understand it's not solvable. We need to find a way to live with it. There's absolutely no way we would be able to consolidate and streamline all our processes, all our data across, a few millions of customers. It cannot happen. That is, so from a situation where everyone were trying to sort that, huge transformations, billions of dollars to the system integrators and to the software vendors, trying to transform, creating these big data lakes that had no ROI behind them. Everyone failed, or almost everyone failed, And now, it's unsolvable. Whether it's solvable or unsolvable, we can speak in a second, but it is definitely a huge problem. These legacy systems, I have yet to meet a large US bank or insurance company or a telco that doesn't have mainframe software, RAN software. Somewhere there is a piece of code written in COBOL. Always. No one knows how to fix it. There's a one guy that knows the code. He has job security for life, right? No one touches him in IT. He comes for half an hour a day, drink a cup of tea, and being paid a lot because they're afraid that what's going to happen if he leaves, because he's the only one that knows the system from 2 decades ago. But that's the reality. And how do you ping the data? They don't have APIs. They don't have SOA architecture. They don't have all this tech buzzwords that we don't care about. But the reality is that data is still very siloed. Processes are very fragmented. The agent needs to navigate through many different systems to understand what you want. Again, in the complicated scenario, if it's simple, it goes digital. If it's complicated, digital are not there to help because a lot of coding work to automate that. It goes to a human. The human needs to take his time to be very savvy, slow system, latency system, find the data. It all takes a lot of time. And then what you end up with is the frustration. So we talked about these, the more complicated interactions going into the human. We talked about the complex landscape of IT. And now the last piece that service providers are facing is just a shortage of skilled employees. Huge shortage of skilled employees. Now, we can speak a lot about why is that, the millennials that don't want to work in that environment and they want a faster satisfaction and no one goes to work in customer service anymore. But it's also the competitive landscape. Work from home, no one, forecasted it, but have disrupted a lot of these long beliefs and fundamentals of the market, right? Let's say I am a customer service agent and I know banking. I've been doing that for 4, 5, 6 years, right? Or I know utilities and I've been doing that for 8, 9, 10 years, whatever. And I take calls and I'm good at it. In the past, I was bound to the utility company or the bank or whatever that had a contact center in relevant proximity from my house. Now, again, usually these contact centers are not based in Boston or San Francisco or Manhattan, right? Where cost of living is high and real estate is high, etc. They are in rural areas, more in the outskirts. They provide a great work and great living for the people that live there. But now, in work from home, I'm not confined to whatever contact center that is in my district or in the outskirts of my town. I can take calls from home from a bank that is based on the other side of the country, or from a utility. I can be down in Texas and answer calls about the storms in Minneapolis, right? And the winter alerts. No one cares, right? As long as I know my business. So, and switching is so easy, right? You give me $2-3 more an hour, I'm gone. Now you think of the training, you think of the onboarding, but churn is so high. It's the US. People leave with or without notice, right? Today I'm here, tomorrow I'm in a new place.
Yep.
Now you have experienced agents. There are marketplaces out there, right? Where they're going out to find experienced agents per vertical. And as an experienced agent, I put my CVs, and if you pay me more, I'll move. Now, front office, customer operating center is a cost center. Very, very rarely it's a revenue center. Very, very rarely it really generates money for the organization. It costs, serving customer costs money. So there is some guy, poor guy, he needs to manage the cost. His employees are leaving. He cannot hire. If he needs to hire, he needs to pay more. So he tried to do more with less. Guess what happens? You wait more time. You get less experienced agents because you pay less, all that jazz. And with all that, we get such bad experience. So these are the three examples. The last one I would mention, right after these three reasons, is we very rarely compare within industry. And that is a bit unfair, right? We look at the experience that Amazon gives us digitally, right? A company that was founded from the ground up to be a digital leader that optimizes its supply chain, that differentiate via ease of use and so on. And we ask, why my bank isn't like that? Why my telco isn't like that? But we don't look at our bank and say, let's say I bank with Bank of America. We don't say, but Wells Fargo website is better or Citibank is better or whatever, because we don't go to Citibank website or TD Bank website. We stuck with our own website and we say the website, the experience is not good enough, right? We go to the AT&T website, but we don't really know what Verizon or T-Mobile are offering. We just don't know. We are stuck within a single provider per industry, and then we start comparing cross-industry with these high-flying digital leaders that it's almost impossible for a traditional player to compete with. And again, our perceived experience becomes relatively or very bad.
So I have some thoughts, but Carlos, jump in, buddy. Go ahead.
Well, a couple of thoughts. First, I'd say the first one is my experience as a consumer is that I just think it's customer service roulette. It's always remarkable to me how you can call the same company 2 days in a row and have wildly different experience. And I just think about two who I work with recently. One was Warby Parker, the eyeglass company. The one is Verizon. In both cases, a first contact to fix the problem was awful. A second contact a couple of days later was fantastic. So it struck me that it is this roulette wheel. This is how I approach it. I have no idea what I'm going to get. I might get the first experience, which is pretty awful, or I might get the one which is, really wonderful. A person who knows exactly what they're doing, fixes the problem, walks you step by step to what needs to be done, and leaves you loving the company. The other thing is something that you mentioned, Oded, about cost center, or at least as a consumer, when I think about contacting a company with a problem, they're either revenue generation centers or revenue protection centers. So that's really what they're doing as far as I'm concerned. I'm either buying something or I'm deciding whether I ever will buy something again from them. So that idea that this person taking a call is just a cost, I find it really amazing if that's how executives think about those people, because they either are growing revenue or protecting the revenue someone else grew.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Carlos, and it's gotten so bad that depending on the service, right? It's a little more difficult. There's a little bit more stickiness with a bank, right, than some of these other services. But I've gotten to the point where I know that the problem that I have with a vendor is going to be such a pain in the neck from a customer experience standpoint that I will just switch, Oded, right? I'll actually switch to another company. The reality is I may end up having the same problem with that vendor, but just the challenges of customer experience are just, I just know it's going to be an uphill battle. Now, I agree with what you said before, Oded, by the way. Carlos knows this. I actually think that it's so profound that I think customer experience is the only thing that's going to differentiate certain companies over the next couple of years. I mean, you look at the fashion industry being democratized. You look at the retail space where physical location no longer really makes a difference. I can get a drug or a pharmaceutical in 24 hours or less, so I don't have to go down the street to the local CVS. You have partnerships with the DoorDashes of the world that are, delivering things that you never could get delivered before. So, I think of, scenarios like Amazon, because it's always the example that everybody uses. But, in an example like that, where I'm willing to pay more money for a seamless experience and to know that I won't have a challenge returning something, that becomes the gold standard, right? So I think it becomes, the only real difference as technology becomes more commoditized and more democratized. I think it's the only differentiator. I actually go to the other extreme to say, why do we even need people in these jobs? I mean, most of my bad experiences are not technology driven. They're people driven. My frustrations are usually, the person on the other side of the phone who, hates their job and wants to wants to take it out on me. And the reality is that, there is huge turnover in this space. There's huge hiring challenges now. Now there's layoffs. Why don't we just switch to all tech?
Because of the third problem I mentioned, right, or the IT landscape, right? It sounds simple on theory, and trust me, all organizations, and by the way, not from the cost perspective, sorry, not from the experience perspective, but from the cost perspective, right? I can save money if a bot is doing that versus a human, right? It doesn't matter if it's chatbot or online service or an app. It doesn't matter. The moment someone is self-serve, it's cheaper for the organization. So it's from an experience standpoint, it's from a cost standpoint. The reason this is not happening faster is not from lack of motivation or lack of understanding by large enterprises that it's important. It's just that it's freaking hard, right? If I have so many systems in the background that the agent needs to retrieve money from in order to give you as a customer an educated response, right? We have worked with a tax agency somewhere that when you pick up the phone and hit their service center just to understand, what's the status of my tax credit? I submitted my taxes. The poor agent needs to navigate through 24 different screens in 7 different systems just to give you an educated answer. Now, imagine you need to do that. You need to teach some sort of chatbot to do that, right? That is an almost an impossible task, right? You would never have enough labeled data to do that, like with machine learning, and to do it manually, the actual integration is going to cost ridiculously. So they're using shortcuts, they're using RPAs, and they're using these sort of things, but it's just so damn hard for these organizations to make everything exposed and accessible. Now, you mentioned before the progress of ChatGPT and so on. However, remember, the strength of ChatGPT, the ability of Google to react as fast as they claim they will react, eventually goes back to the amount of available data, amount of searches, amount of time. ChatGPT have the entire internet. Google have the entire internet. They also have millions of users trying it and perfecting it and improving it. Eventually, when you look at the process that happens 1,000 times a week, and this is a big process 1,000 times a week, we're not even getting to the process that happens 10 times a day. And these are the complicated ones. But, how would you teach a bot to do that? Now, do you really think a tax agency is going to open the database to ChatGPT and bring in an external, a bank is going to expose all the data to an open source or to a Google-like tool that if you want to use Google, you need to sign in the terms and agreements that you open your entire data to them.
But they should, Oded. You know what? And I realize it's an extreme example, but the tax agencies aren't going to release that data. But we talk a lot about data privacy. I said a couple of weeks ago to Carlos, I think data privacy is a misnomer. I don't think it really exists. Google can construct a profile of you. There's a lot of other databases out there that can. And the arguments I always have with my less tech-friendly friends, who complain about privacy is, I would gladly, I've already given up the privacy, but I would gladly give up some privacy if I could call the IRS and actually get an answer to my questions. I mean, I literally get hung up on by the IRS because they tell me, I get a message that says, sorry, we don't have enough agents to help you right now. Click. I'm like, what? I'm on the phone 40 minutes. You just hung up on me? Now, I realize they're not the same because they're not a business and they don't have to retain you. You're a customer for life. But, there's examples like that in the commercial world too.
So I'll say two things about that, right? Well, actually, even three thoughts that are coming to mind. First, an interesting story. Back in 2015, 16, there was an interesting study done by some academia, professors, Mall of America, the largest mall up in Minneapolis. What they did is they tracked people. So people going into the mall, they went up to them and told them, look, we want to measure the patterns of how people walk through the mall. Would you be willing to take a sensor with you, right? So give me your privacy, take a sensor, and we want to monitor how you go, where you shop, how much time you spend anywhere.
Mhm.
And most people, like over 90% of people, said like no. And then they said, okay, I would give you a voucher, right? What was the average amount of the voucher that was needed to get people to let go of their privacy and allow to be monitored in the mall, as long as you pay me for my privacy and data? What was the amount?
I'm guessing it was lower.
13.4 something, like almost, let's say $13. So people are very protective of their privacy as long as they don't get anything out of it. The moment they'll get something out of it, $13, yeah, you can have my privacy. Better service, yes, take my data. I mean, we all use Gmail. We know that Google monitors our email. Google reads, the AI reads everything we write everywhere. All your emails via Gmail are being monitored, analyzed to build this profile so they can present better commercials and better adverts to you. And we give it for free because, hey, wait a minute, this is the best email platform out there. I'm going to use it. I don't care. So you are right from the individual consumer psyche. Now think of the enterprise psyche. I'm now going to open all my databases. That's my competitive advantage. My customers, their history, what I know about them. Now, the moment I open up my customer database to the world, everyone can do a campaign. Everyone can hit them with an offering. Everyone can try to get them to churn and move. Everyone can know. I mean, this is a very, very sensitive data that I don't see organizations open that fast. Forget about tax, right? Just the CRM data, the master data management, is considered a very valuable asset by these, again, large legacy enterprises that have been around for a while and saved a lot of data on their install base. They're not going to open it just to improve service. It's too much of a risk for them.
That aren't we headed to a future where it's not ChatGPT, but it is a private version of that, where somebody will package it and say, "This is Microsoft's version of Chat," just like CRM, right? Salesforce. There isn't a giant CRM system that everybody puts their information in. Everybody has to buy their version of Salesforce or whatever it is, and then populate that. It isn't the vision for these companies that somebody will pay whatever it costs, $20-30 million a year, to have their own private chat GPT 5 years from now.
So it goes back to, will it be effective or good, right?
Right.
It won't be as good because the reason it is good is because it is based on so much data and all the data. The moment it's limited to my data, then it's small. Now, you mentioned Salesforce. However, Salesforce greatness is, they went to the cloud and they made the entire case management processes of CRM very easy with drag and, you configure Salesforce and you're up there. But each enterprise configured Salesforce to his own processes. So this means that you would need to teach this Microsoft version of ChatGPT or whatever. You need to teach this your processes, your data. And if you don't have enough labeled data, or you have enough labeled data just for few processes, the small, annoying, complicated process are going to stay a problem for a very, very long while.
So is it possible that we're just in this chasm between the past and the future, where the past was human-centric customer experience and it worked more or less fine, and 50 years from now we'll have fully automated, right, machine-based customer experience, and we're just kind of in this valley now as we transition from the past to the present?
So first, again, I think we take the perception and inflate it a little bit. Think of what you could do. Okay, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you stepped into your branch, the bank?
A long time. I mean,
A long
in fact, I opened accounts during the pandemic with banks that I could do it online because I didn't want to go into the branch, right?
Right. So 20 years ago, I remember my mother, when I was growing up, a bit more than 20 years, around 35, 40 years ago, once a week, every Friday, she would go to the post office and the bank. And there was like the weekly routine.
Mm-hmm.
No one goes to the branch anymore. Now, is it a good experience? Branches are still out there. If my mother can still go if she wants, but so experience is improving significantly. We have a lot more available to us digitally. Also, there are always new entrants, right? Now we can open account digitally. We couldn't do that in the past. New entrants, new players, new versions. So I don't think we're in a valley or a chasm. I think there is an improvement to an extent. I think the state of customer experience was never amazing. I think it was always dependent on this guy who is not doing maximum wage. He's doing average to minimum wage. And either he's a nice guy or not, either he's savvy or not, and the roulette that you mentioned before. That was always the case. And organizations are getting better, not as fast as we can. I think our perception, because we look at organizations who are doing it so well, we mentioned Amazon, put them aside. Think of cable providers versus Netflix, right? But now think of Netflix versus Disney Plus versus Hulu versus, oh, wait a minute, it's a similar experience, right? So these industries are being transformed. It takes time, but I don't think we're in a valley. I think we are actually improving. I think perception is a problem, and eventually we churn, we switch providers because of our perception of an individual or a series of few negative experiences. But I wouldn't be that harsh. And yes, it will get better and better. And I think, there are interesting case studies. I think one of the most interesting case studies is Zappos, right? You mentioned before, everyone mentioned Amazon. So let's speak about Zappos. They sell online shoes, right? Nothing unique about them. Other than, the brand, the product, price, if you can find it online. But, usually you need to differentiate via your search engine optimization and make sure that everyone finds you better. Zappos took a very different approach. They established a contact center and they told their agents, no handling time. Take your time, get to know the customers, speak as long as you want, do whatever you want. They can have calls that can last half an hour. They give their agent budget to do crazy stuff, right? The agent can send flowers to customers. So I want to buy shoes for my son's wedding. And then they're going to send a small wedding gift or a tie or as I said, this is for the prom. They're sending a croissant, whatever. They're doing crazy stuff. And they're differentiating via the customer service that, it's still a service center. It's still revenue generating service. You can call to ask about the shoes you saw online. But they prove that if you are the only one doing that, it's worth your while. The moment there will be 5 providers like that, they won't be able to do that as well. And they've been quite successful with this approach for a few years now. So I don't think the state of customer experience is that bad. And if it was that important to everyone and it would prove, they would pay double agents, and they would hire twice as many agents and they would do whatever. So far, we have proven as consumers, we're not buying only from Zappos. Eventually, we'll buy shoes from wherever we want, right? So customer experience is important, but
Not me.
Really?
I order everything on Amazon, Oded, because every time they tell me they can't return something, they look at my order history and they say, "Oh, sorry, Mr. Goodstein, we'll do whatever you want." But no, you bring up yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I think where it goes, Oded, is from kind of customer experience, what we all call it, to really customer concierge. You know, if you can get that experience where you feel that somebody, it's the empathy factor, right? Where you feel like no matter how difficult it is for that rep, no matter how many systems they have to play around with to get you an answer, you feel like they're on your side, right? I have had a couple scenarios where the rep is complaining about their software, the rep is complaining about their technology, and my first reaction was, that's kind of weird for you to complain about your system's banking system. You're a bank, but you know something? It stood out because all of a sudden I felt like that rep was on my team and was going to do whatever they could to fix the loopholes that I had to jump through. They were there with me, and that's something that, you know, I think if we can get, you know, technology to take care of the more repeatable, monotonous stuff that people hate to do, get that, whatever it is, 85% done electronically, automatically, whatever. And then your experiences with people are more those. It's both a better experience for the customer as well as a better experience for the representative. It's a better job, right? And what strikes me, you know, with Chat GPT, you know, everybody's talking about, you know, it can get an MBA, it can write a poem, it can do all this stuff. The most impressive thing that I've seen that Chat GPT has done is acknowledge that it was wrong, right? If you call it on something and you say, hey, this doesn't make sense, it actually comes back and says, you're right, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, right? That's amazing. That's the most amazing part. It's the empathy factor.
Then I allow one other point, and I think it's how the company sets itself up to you. I know people who are on T-Mobile, and they don't complain about how bad the call center is or whatever, or the network, because they're saving money, and they know the pitch is, we cut a few corners, our systems aren't that great, our network is probably gonna not make a phone call here and not there, but so what? Because it's 1/3 less than Verizon. The people on Verizon are saying, hey, I'm paying 1/3 more than T-Mobile. I want my problem solved when I make a phone call. And I think what the company tells you about itself is how you experience that phone call. If they present themselves as a customer-centric company, as a company that has great technology, as the best in the business, and it doesn't get followed through, you get angry. If the company says, look, it is what it is, right? We're giving you a pretty good product and we're trying to shave every last piece of cost out of this supply chain, give us a break. Most people will.
You sound like the PR people for Southwest Airlines, Carlos.
Right. Look, it's the Southwest model, or Ryan Air, right? The famous one where they explored making everybody stand up on flights, and that could save another 10% off your ticket.
I agree to an extent, Carl. You know? I would agree with you to an extent, and I'll say why. Because in some cases, you know, companies have been trying to set the premium, but because of the pressure coming from, let's not use the term low cost, value for money offering, they needed to improve profitability because of investors. So they ended up trying to meet the value for money P&L with the premium value proposition. And this is where they hit the wall more than one time. And we mentioned Amazon. Amazon are not more expensive than UPS. They're not more expensive than FedEx. They're not more expensive than other online retailers. On the contrary, they were able to optimize their value chain and to optimize the supply chain to an extent that they can offer a great experience at a reasonable cost. So one doesn't need to come on versus the other when it comes to customer service. Now, when you look at the entire differentiation package in airlines, for sure. But again, if you think of a bank, insurance company, you know, eventually with an insurance, you want to know that, if you get a fender bender, you can pick up the phone and someone would help you, or you can submit a claim, etc. It's not around, oh, you pay less for your insurance here, but we're not going to help you when push comes to shove. Some industries are just need to follow through on the promise. I do agree with everything you said, and it down to the person down to the wire of the guy that picks up the phone, and whether or not he's trained enough and good at what he does, and empathic enough, and the tools that he's being provided to handle your call better. It all goes down to people.
Yeah, Oded, all I was saying is I think that it's that most consumers will look at it in the context of what the company says about
Oh,
itself.
I agree. This is what I said. I agree with you to an extent. You're right on the examples you gave. You're absolutely right. I just think across industry there will be different variations of that. And by the way, it also goes down to us. When was the last time when you needed to select a service provider, you selected based on the quality of service and not based on price? When you are going to renew the insurance, let's say you decide to leave Nationwide, Liberty, Geico, whoever, you leave your insurance provider. You would call and say, this is the car, mark, model, this is, okay, what is my premium? You would look at just the price. You would never check, how the website looks like. What can I do online? What is the service they provide me? Same with healthcare, same with utility. You look, by the way, I don't know. Maybe you look just at experience.
Carlos is a fancy guy, Oded. He buys the most expensive of everything.
There you go.
Can't go by him.
We as consumers, still today, we complain about customer experience. We churn. We leave because of bad customer experience. We absolutely would leave.
But will we pay for
it? Don't come.
Yeah.
We're not willing to pay the premium for that on a large scale. And again, Verizon is a different example of one better quality call.
Some people are, right? And I'm one of them because I'm with Verizon, loyally. I know it's way more expensive than other options, but most of the time when I have a problem, I call Verizon. Their people know what they're doing and they do a really good job. And I've had.
Do you know? Now I will challenge you on that. The network is considered better. You have less hangups. It's important for you. You're willing to pay a premium for the product. It's not the service. It's the product. It's the network.
Both. I think for me, it's both. But maybe it's just my.
Now I would ask you: do you know whether AT&T or T-Mobile agents are not as good?
I know T-Mobile isn't.
Okay. All right. Most people won't know because they won't convey with the others, right? They convey. You've been a loyal customer for a while. You convey just with the Verizon agents, and it's great that they give you a great experience. But maybe other agents are giving great experience to other communication providers. We don't know because we only serve via one vendor, and that's kind of the tragedy of customer experience, and the fact that people very rarely remember positive experience. They always remember negative experiences. So this is how, you would always hear about, if you have a great experience, okay, you would tell maybe your wife. If you have a negative experience, you would tell everyone you will complain in Facebook, everyone would hear about that. It's the tragedy of customer experience, but you want to be in business, that's the cost of doing business. So
but that's changing. I think that's changing, maybe just because I'm in this business, but I do the opposite now. I assume a negative experience, and when I have a positive experience, I tell 10 people. And the other side of that, Oded, is it is the friction in changing is less than it used to be, right? That banking example I gave, it's actually not that hard to change banks anymore. You can change investment companies, pretty easily now. You can switch your cell phone. I mean, remember a day where you switched cell phone companies, you lost your phone number? I mean, you don't have those things anymore. But I'm curious, Oded, in the couple minutes we have left, a lot of the conversation in the market right now is about AI use cases. Is there anything that you're seeing as far as AI being applied to this space that has you really excited about the next couple of years?
So I do hope that these new advancements would make chatbots and mainly voice bots much, much better. Today, to train a chatbot, it's a nightmare. And you have so many startups of chatbots that they do one use case. I'm a chatbot just for technical support, or I'm a chatbot for just checking liability in healthcare. and you have full companies established on that, going to the healthcare provider, selling just the single use case. I do hope that these type of advancement would be able to accelerate the chatbot adoption, because as you said before, the more we'll be able to automate, the better we'll be able to do with the small number of agents we still need to train. And if it's not 60% digital, it's 80% digital, it's better. So I do hope that acceleration of chatbots, voice bots, and so on, it won't be 100%. I don't think we need to aspire to that. But we're maybe facing, or I think we're facing a big crossing the chasm, or a big leap in the chatbot voice bot domain.
Yeah. Great. Oded, thank you so much. This is such a great conversation. I obviously I could talk about this, as I know you could, for hours and hours and hours. So we'll keep the conversation going. Maybe have you on again and see what's happening in the market in a few weeks. But thanks for joining us. And for those watching, just a reminder, we're here to help. If you need help with a project, or you just want to get some advice or coaching, message me or visit us at DEInetwork.com. In the meantime, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, Ted. See you soon.
Thanks for having me.